A friend asked me to clarify why I suggested that both Alexandr Dugin and his modern liberal detractors are wrong. I shall try to explain in what significant sense Alexandr Dugin is and has been a victim of modern liberalism. And the words that follow will be dedicated in part to a relevant, pertinent, physical victim of modern liberalism, namely Dugin's daughter, Daria Dugina, who has been recently assassinated as a result of her involvement in the large debate. In what sense is Dugin a victim of modern liberalism? There are a few interventions on the internet, and some links will be posted beneath this video. In these interventions, these debates, Dugin defends his cause against modern liberalism. He speaks of modern liberalism as upholding a merely negative view of freedom, freedom from as opposed to freedom for. His detractors insist that in the modern world, in modern contemporary liberal societies, we do have freedom for, no less than freedom from. These modern detractors of Dugin do not, however, weigh adequately the significance of that distinction between freedom for and freedom from. They do not highlight the status of freedom for in our liberal democracies, the problem of privatization of freedom for in the context of a system that is guarantor, first and foremost, of freedom from. And freedom from eventually means coercion into staying away from the public sphere. The fundamental problem, however, and where we should begin from, is the early modern problem, the separation or the mutual alienation of particular and universal. This is an alienation, a difficulty that was set up at the very dawn of the modern world. And anyone who hasn't studied the early modern thinkers, early prophets of the modern world, would not be aware of this. It's just that simple. We would simply take for granted what we are raised to believe, namely that there is such a thing as a universal up there and a particular. And so the debates in politics, debates that are carried on, are structured in terms of particularists and universalists. So Dugin is supposed to stand for the particulars. The modern liberalism that attacks him is supposed to stand for the universal, which is in turn to vouch for the particular. So what is the way we save the particulars? in our modern liberal society? Well, through our universal, through the universal rights, through the bills that appeal to universality. That is how we save the particular. And in what specific terms do we save the particular? By redefining him in terms of individuality. So the particular is the individual, and the society at large, or rather the regime, and so the ideals of the modern liberal society constitute the universal that is supposed to save the particular, guarantee that the particular has his liberties within certain limits dictated by the universal, of course. In listening to the debates that are online, into which, again, I shall refer to beneath this video by including some links, I jotted down a few notes and might as well go through them here without any real preparation, but these notes can shed light on the nature of the problem at hand and show why DUGIN is a victim of modern liberalism. Now, here I noted, and now I'm reading, that liberty from is the beginning of liberty for. Now, this is a claim raised by DUGIN's detractors. Liberty from is the beginning of liberty for. What does that mean? It means that first we have to attend to securing people from danger. Then they will be able to pursue their positive ends. So modern liberalism is based on this principle. The modern liberal state is to guarantee liberty from evil. Now, evil, the word evil is not mentioned by the detractors because they're way too modern to speak in terms of evil as evil. So they simply leave it at saying, well, there are things that are disagreeable, there are problems that we want to stay away from, and so we want to guarantee that we have a place that is safe and secure, and so we set up this wall, this enclosure, within which we are allowed to pursue our goods. I noted down here, problem of the cave. Freedom from evil, the safe society, can obscure freedom for the good. What does that mean? Is the good properly understood, properly perceived in the absence of danger? Safety, salvation, these two terms are bound to each other in political terms. We know that in the Middle Ages there was talk about no salvation outside of the church. Well, in this case, in the modern sense, there is no salvation outside of the society, the modern liberal society, or so it is believed. Outside of that society, there is evil that will not allow you to pursue the good, certainly will not allow you to pursue it as well as you can within the parameters, the strictures of the modern liberal society. I note down here solution. solution presumably to the problem of the cave, recognizing that the flight from evil entails not primarily an external evil, but one underlying, even imminent in the flight itself, most notably where the flight is moved by fear. The division between freedom from and freedom for is, I note, suicidal. You do not establish a universal freedom from for the sake of allowing freedom for particular ends. And here's the problem. The former would be a false god, or deus ex machina, guarantor of safety. What happens when we perceive the good from within the confines of a safety that has already been given to us ex machina, which is to say mechanically from above? Not a safety that is given to us by a God who is within or hiding even within nature. This is the Christian God, incidentally. The God who was hidden among the pagans in their ordinary life, in their own reason, and that then is manifest, revealed publicly with, of course, the Gospels. But the idea is that these are not two different gods. So we're talking about a God who does not ultimately destroy nature, but who redeems nature. In other words, he comes out to show that nature was fundamentally good. He vouches for God, for nature. In this case, no. Machiavelli proposed that establish a machine that allows everyone to pursue his own private end. Everyone is a ghetto unto himself. Everyone becomes an individual, a social atom, indivisible. Or so it would seem. Socially indivisible. In other words, not political. This is the complete breakdown of society under the sway of a hegemonic, despotic, totalizing machine. DUGIN does not like that. But he believes to have a viable answer to that monstrosity. I wrote down here, alternative. You need a guarantor of liberty, not for radical individuals, individuated by whom? By what, anyway? But for human beings naturally tied to a transcendent divine end. The positive end is not a choice. This is the fundamental problem with modern liberalism. The fundamental problem is that our positive ends become or perceived as our choices. What is more, choices of the individual. There has to be an intimate tie. This is if you are to escape the totalizing machine. An intimate tie between the guarantor of liberty from the state and the guarantor of liberty for. Now, this is not possible if the guarantor of liberty from is a machine. Okay? It is possible, however, if he is a Caesar. And in that case, there will be an intimate tie between Caesar and God. Between human government and divine government. Again, this is not possible if human government is technocratic. Between human providence and divine providence. Again, the providence of the modern state is a false providence. It's a mechanical providence that is predicated on the utter absence of any divine providence. So here we face the problem of natural reason. the proper function of human conversation, human reason, as the one this talk is inviting, is a clarification of human authority in the light of divine authority. If there is no divine authority, there is no perfection of authority that entails a marriage of reason and authority, of law and freedom, then there is and cannot be any clarification of human authority. A higher standard is required. Now, in classical terms, reason is originally internal, an internal, natural articulation of law. So that is jurisprudence, the interpretation of law. And it's originally some activity that is internal to the constitution of law itself, as opposed to standing outside of law. Now, this doesn't mean that law is simply the product of reason in mechanical terms, or in fact in any terms. Law cannot be reduced to its interpretation. Nevertheless, there is, we can say with the classics, an eternal dialogue between law and reason. But in fact, reason is that dialogue. And so we could say that there is a communion between the answers given in the law and the questions that are present in reason. There is a dialectic of the law, and that dialectic is reason itself. How does it play out? Well, of course, in the modern context we see with Hegel, this is to take us a bit far, but we see this in Hegel, and we see that ultimately law has to be transformed by reason into something that it is not originally. So divine law is not originally more than an abstraction. It has to be realized by reason, and reason therefore must be historical. And it involves and presupposes there an end to itself, the end of the process being history. Now, let us get back to the notes. Reason is originally internal to the law. Now, human government should defend not, therefore, individual historical rights, but natural right. And so the natural reason that alone can support human government, saving it from the Scylla of monolithic despotism and the Charybdis of anarchy. So if we want to avoid these extremes which deny the political, which destroy the human, then we are to recover natural reason as opposed to mechanical reason. A reason that is naturally, freely open to and ultimately tied to divine transcendence, as opposed to a reason that is self-referential, ultimately, that is grounded in the absence of any divine transcendence. This absence can be represented by the doctrine of evolution, for instance, which in itself entails this mechanical universe that can be understood in its own right without reference to a divine mind, a meaning that can be added to decorate it, that can be added for our Sunday Mass, but it is not. During the week, we don't need to study nature. We don't need to be metaphysicians, shall we say, in order to conduct our research as physicists. Now, Ergo, therefore, there is a natural telos, a direction, a path for man as man, one that does not resolve itself in the constitution of a universal society. This is the point. But that does not leave us with particular empires either. And here we go to Dugin. Dugin objects to the universal society by appealing to, I won't refer to the various authors, but the conflict of the battle between civilizations, various empires. We will have centers of humanity, centers that are at odds with each other and that are unreconcilable. They do not yield an overarching universal society. They are irreducible, according to Dugin and his authorities. Now, that is ultimately, and I will get back to this, a reverting to tribalism as an alternative to the modern destruction of classical nature and the establishment of a new contractual society, political order that sees itself as opposed by, threatened by nature. There is, however, this is the classical response, a natural hierarchy of political alternatives, the politically better and worse, as Hillel Gilden once pointed out in an article. I'll try to post a link to that as well. Even if, or properly insofar as, there is no perfect one. We don't have any perfect society. There is no universal society. Dugin is perfectly right there. Modern liberalism is sham liberalism. It pretends to offer a universal safety net for all freedom. You can be free. There's the machine that guarantees your freedom. What do you have to complain about? It's a perfect machine. One of the greatest achievements of mankind, as Dugin's detractors insist. But again, here we have this, well, we don't quite realize it now, but it can be shown to be a false dichotomy between the universal and the particular. Incidentally, to give a taste of the falsity of this dichotomy, it is enough to return to the jargon of children. The small child sees his dad and he says, "Dad." And then he sees another man and he says, "Dad." So for him, all men are dad. And yet dad is very personal, very particular. And yet this particular is a universal. Another example from politics, Caesar. Caesar is a very particular man, and yet he is a universal. And we could go on and on with this. Poetic speech, which is natural speech for man, is, and it is the child's speech, does not understand this distinction that modern man in particular stresses, even though medieval Christianity at times goes in that direction. And I should add, late imperial Rome drifted in that direction. Now, the universal society is a delusion. Individuals do not branch out into it, as we're told by Dugin's detractors. For our proper end is transcendent, not secular. That's not what we're born for, to join the universal society. No. What of the this worldly, then? what are we going to do about it if there is no such universal society? What of the secular? It can be no more than the shadow, a promise of the otherworldly, a poetic mirror of things to come. And this we see, incidentally, in Dante, who is sometimes referred to as a prophet of modern globalism. That is absolute rubbish. He is very clear about this. We have two ends, a human and a divine. And the human can be no more than a mirror of the divine. So, no, Dante is not a prophet of modernity. That is absolute rubbish. A poetic mirror there of things to come, of the other side of the mirror. The mirror can be better or worse, but never the thing itself, never the other side. Now, where does this leave us? Well, let us polish our laws, not as machines for individuals, but as mirrors, poetic entities, calling human beings to live in the light of eternity, with a piety that is primarily toward God above all Caesars, including and especially the one incarnated in the modern machine, who must be, and I say who, must be regarded as a false Caesar. And a false Caesar is a bad king, which is a tyrant. The modern machine is tyrannical, period. For the modern universal is nothing but a pretense, an abstract, symbolic form that is as particular as any of the particulars it looks down upon, if only by pretending to provide for their safety or salvation. It is a pretense. It is fake, a fake Caesar. Our universal is, in itself, is a particular poetic form. Of course, the poetic form dies, becomes bad, when it no longer reflects divine transcendence. There you go again with the modern machine. This poetic form is universal in the respect that many can see their proper natural end in it, as in a mirror. So, all, we say, particulars can see themselves in the universal. But the universal is just a particular mirror. But no sooner does the so-called universal mistake itself, or no sooner is it mistaken for that end, no sooner does it pretend to have solved within itself the problem of the universal, of the particular. So what is the problem of the particular? Well, universal justice for all, resolving the gap between merit and reward. Well, no sooner does that happen than it converts, the universal converts into a mere instrument of obscurantism, which is what, and here Dugin is right, modern liberalism is becoming, if it has not already become that. And yet, Dugin appeals to the collective, particular versus collective. These, again, are very cloudy, nebulous distinctions. Dugin calls for the collectivities as if empire could replace heaven. There is no heaven for Dugin. There are only empires or centers of civilization, but civilization, different civilizations, in fact. You say, well, doesn't that imply a universal notion of civilization? And no, he doesn't want to go there. That's just an empty shell, as it must be for a certain reading of Hegel. So we want something concrete, and in the concrete, what we can have is only a society, the only sustainable society, is one that is tied to the roots, our roots, traditional roots, our blood and soil, to speak with an infamous source. So his liberal opponents respond to him, and they invoke, what do they invoke? Well, in effect, they invoke a global empire for individuals. What is this machine, this globalist machine? It's an empire, but it's universal. And it treats everyone as individuals. In other words, as little bricks within the machine. It dehumanizes everyone. Transhumanism, DUGIN objects to justifiably. It's horrific, the destruction of the human being. There's nothing more abominable than technocracy. It is the ultimate incarnation of abomination. Abomination, taken literally, means against man. So here we go back to the problem of anthropology. What is man, fundamentally? Is he an individual moving towards the universal that allows for individual dreams, so we can all dream? And it's one of these detractors of DUGIN says, well, I've been studying the Kabbalah for decades. I'm steeped in metaphysics, and yet I am a liberal, modern liberal. In other words, what does he mean? He means, modern liberal society can allow me to dream, my individual dream. I can pick the Kabbalah, I can study it, it can become, in some quarters they speak about subculture. My subculture, it can be my hobby. I can take it very seriously. I can be even obsessed by my hobby. You say, well, let's go Marxist then. These are all fetishes, bourgeois fetishisms. And so we have to go and have the revolution and establish the new society. Ouch. The new society in which all of our dreams come true. Well, but this is communism, and this is the global empire. The result of the global empire is that all of our dreams have to be mediated by technology, which is the reason, the mechanical reason of the global empire. And so we cannot dream anymore. We are not allowed to dream outside of the dictates of the global empire. That is why we have mass media, TV, Netflix, and all the other garbage to sell us dreams. We have to pay for the machine to produce dreams for us so that we don't have to even bother dreaming our own dreams. So no, there is no guaranteeing of freedom within the scope of the apotheosis of the regime of freedom from. Because that apotheosis entails the rise of a technology that seeks to dominate your entire life and, of course, invades your private life and seeks to determine it in any possible way. So you no longer dream. Your imagination is no longer innocent. You no longer dream on your own, innocent dreams. They are coerced. They say, well, the detractors, the DUGIN's detractors say, well, but we can do whatever we want. No, false, absolute rubbish. Your own imagination has been shaped by the technocratic regime, by the mechanistic reason. You fail to ask any question in a non-mechanical, non-mechanistic way. You have become a kind of robot, a cyborg, and you don't even know it. The cyborg outside of yourself is just a manifestation of what you are becoming or what you have become already. A zombie. A marionette in a technocratic system. That's all. And DUGIN does not like that. He objects to it. Well, In what terms does he object? Man is a passion for collective identity, the group, the tribe. That's his objection, the passions. That's why he approves of populism. The passions of the people, the folk, the demos. And the modern liberals say, no, 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 that's violent, that's dangerous, that's bad. We have to domesticate those passions, and so we need the machine to domesticate those passions, because man by nature is a brute. Really. Well, we all agree that we come from a state of nature, do we not? Well, Machiavellians do. Sure. There is no fallen condition, therefore there is no original blessing. Therefore, there is no principle of divinity in man, and therefore the machine is needed, absolutely. No cultivation of natural reason, only mechanical reason. And incidentally, they speak about values, and we end up with feelings, in fact, and these feelings are dominated by the machine. So what we have here is facts versus feelings, right, today in the debates. We see things in political arenas, my feelings, oh no, but these are the facts. This is all bogus talk. Absolute bogus, and absolutely Machiavellian. So what does Dugin say? He says, well, there is history, there is evolution, and this is God. Oh, he doesn't say this explicitly, but ultimately that's what he is up to. We are Christian because that is our tradition, but the tradition is within this context of history, of evolution, which is, as the ultimate context of things, it is de facto God. Now the liberal retorts, history, yes, to be sure. Evolution, yes, that's what we teach in our own colleges. But it is represented by technocracy. It has representation, universal representation. Dugin objects, God, divine unity, cannot be represented politically. No, that is destructive of humanity. It's a lie. It's a fetish. You are idolatrous. Dugin suggests, well, you cannot solve the problem completely. War is necessary and always will be. It is part and parcel of our human condition, which cannot be overcome. A permanent condition. You say, well, what is he worrying about then if it cannot be overcome? Why is he worrying about technocracy? Well, he's simply saying that no, we're here and we're not leaving. We're going to object. We're going to resist because we're still human, and humans reject abominations. No matter how pretty, no matter how much they smile, no matter how pretty they appear, they're still abominations. You can add more masks to them. You can have them fit 3, 4, 5 masks on and make them look like safe, sanitized entities. No. They're denying our humanity. So Dugin goes on. He says, well, war is necessary. And the liberal retorts, we can overcome war. How? Well, the liberal answer, de facto again, is by eliminating human nature. We have to transform the human being. And this is essentially the modern project. We have to transform the passions, domesticate them, but also guide them, coerce them, transform them, and even at the biological level, we want to manipulate them so that, well, Brave New World, there you have it, medication, soma, whatever. These are just these petty examples, but whatever means we can come up with, all of these means, all of this knowledge is all about transforming the human being. That's what it's all about, transhumanism. That's no fantasy. can be a nightmare that people are trying to execute, but it is not far-fetched as a project. Will it fail? Probably. Not without damage. But let us move on. So, you say, well, we want to eliminate human nature as it originally is, because that nature is brutish, brutal. And Dugin responds, no, no good. You are the enemies of humanity. Ah. Ooh. Well, they say, no, you are the enemies of evolution, because you are opposing the ultimate, consummate representative of evolution, which is technocracy. Ouch. And Dugin, now, what does he say? He stands for low plebeian nature. The liberal says that nature begs for the universal. If it's so bad, it must need a machine. There is, in both cases, no divine providence, only evolution. So we have this problem. Nature versus convention or contract. What does this mean? It means that political life is based on compulsions. We're compelled to enter into political society. Dugin suggests that there should be, however, a natural contract or natural societies. It is natural for man to live in tribes. The tribe, this, you can expand this in terms of civilization. So you have one civilization here, another civilization there. Essentially, they're huge tribes. That works for him. That is his way to say, no, this modern opposition between nature and convention, society, is unsustainable. It leads to horrible things. The alternative would be tribalism. Tribalism. Does that work? A natural contract. Why do we enter into society? Why are we even constituted within the society? Man is the collective. He is social. He is political for him. But what does that mean? Is that a free entering? Or is he somehow, what is he moved by? And it turns out he's moved by passions. So it's compelled. It's coerced. Tribalism entails, in classical terms, fallenness, which is what biblical morality tells us. Right? Falling back into the simply mythical city is falling back into a cave, to speak platonically. This is not a solution, Dugin, but our initial problem as fallen men. So Dugin accepts fallenness blindly, whereas the liberals want to deny our fallenness by transforming it. But fallenness without providence begs for liberals' answer. So Dugin is forced to bow to the dictates of globalism. And Dugin is not only one man. Anybody who is in line with what he represents. Ergo, Dugin works unwittingly for liberalism, modern liberalism, or technocracy. Just as Romanticism worked for the modern Enlightenment, or the reason of the machine.